So now I'm going to demonstrate how we use our 3-bin system, our homemade system. The third bay, as we call it, is for our leaf storage. So that's where we store our leaves. So basically we're working with these 2 bays. We've cleared this one out, sieved out all of the compost, and now what we're going to do is this one's been sitting for a while. We've been filling this one up. Honestly, I mean, you would probably want to, or you want to fill it all the way to the top. It's just for demonstration reasons, we're gonna flip it halfway through. So we've got about a half a bay full. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip it over into the second bay, let that cook for another year, and then next spring, check on it, see where it's at in the composting process. Hopefully we'll sift out some of the compost. Whatever the chunkies are left over, we'll put back into the system, and we'll just use bay 1 as our new compost pile to start building once again. So that pile will sit there for the next, till next spring, just kind of hanging out. I will check on it every so often, give it a little water and dry times. Right now, you saw with that squeeze test, it's looking pretty good. So right now it's looking fine, but I will check on that probably weekly or every other week until, winter hits. Adding water where needed and giving it a fluffle-duffle-do-ya every once in a while to circulate and kind of mix everything together. But that is flipping the pile. And now this bay is ready to start all over again with that layering of food scraps and leaves or whatever you're using for brown food. Ta-da! All right, so you've got the kind of compost system you want or digester. We've got our site selection. So the next thing to choose is, or the next thing to address, I should say, is what kind of stuff can you compost? Well, anything that comes from a plant or an animal technically can be composted. Mother Nature is composting all the time. And that compost, the finished compost, is what's going to feed your garden or your lawn or the trees in the woods behind me. Right? Compost is humus is the technical term for compost. Right? That's what Mother Nature creates, and we, because we're impatient, like to speed things up, and because typically we tend to be a bit wasteful, we have a lot more things to compost than, say, Mother Nature does. All right. So, what kind of things? Food scraps. All right, and we're talking backyard system right now. And so in your backyard system, when you're composting, we recommend that you don't compost meat, bones, and dairy, right? And that's not because they won't compost down. It's just because critters being like raccoons and skunks and even the crows, tend to hone in on those smells and visuals. So you don't you don't really want them in it. I mean, if you don't mind, go ahead. I'll be honest, I have always composted all of my food scraps when I've composted outside. So except for raw meats and fish, I don't do that. But anything cooked, I just throw in there. So that's your choice. All right. When you're in the house, you can collect your food scraps with just about anything. Now, yes, can you get a fancy composter or food scrap collector like this one? Sure you can. And it comes with this cool little charcoal filter that kind of keeps the smell down. Right? I've had this for probably about 20 years, so this one's gonna stay with me. All right, because I'm gonna keep using it. But if you're new to the game of food scrap collection, you can use anything out there. And as a matter of fact, we recommend that you do reuse whatever you have in the house, all right? Because as you know, reducing and reusing is a more important step than even recycling, including recycling your food scraps. So Here we've got an old ice cream tub. We've got coffee container. Even those little lettuces that you buy in the plastic containers can be used. And all of this fits very nicely right in the fridge, so you can keep those smells down as you're collecting food scraps, all right? Or this giant coffee thing. So again, you can collect in anything. If you want to collect at home and or collect in your kitchen and then take it to a larger bucket outside, which is what I do in my house, then you can collect in, you know, in anything. So here I've got an old Home Depot bucket that I had sitting around, and that's what I store all of my food scraps in until I am ready to compost them. All right, in a big batch. So, food scraps. So without food scraps, and as we learned earlier, those microbial friends, our bacteria and the fungi, and even the invertebrates, especially outside, so those FBI agents really enjoy a certain recipe. All right, so we're gonna keep in mind 3 parts brown food, like leaves, straw, wood chips, sawdust, shredded paper, all of those little newspaper things you get in the mail. Shred those up and throw them in the compost pile. Why not, right? So all of those brown foods, you want 3 times as much brown food as you do your green food, all right? Green food being all of your food scraps, all right? High in nitrogen, gives them the proteins they need to replicate. The brown foods, and today we're going to be demonstrating with leaves, all right? Brown food gives those microbes the energy they need to get the job done, all right? So now we've got our what we would call feedstocks, that's the technical term, but all of the stuff you need to build a healthy, successful, and delicious pile of food scrap, of compost. All right, so we're going to use our backyard 3-bin system here. And we had already turned over our working bay, all right, our working side. This is the side that's going to be cooking down. We'll talk about that in a minute. So how do we build this pile? All right, again, keeping in mind that 3-to-1 ratio, very important. Also keeping in mind 60 to 65% moisture is really critical, and probably one of the top mistakes I see in backyard composting is that people don't think that they need to water it. Well, like you, those microbes, they need water to survive. So what I'm gonna do here is we were working on building it. It's kind of like layering a lasagna, if you will. You'll hear the lasagna method a lot. All right, so I'm gonna actually just kind of dig a little ditch in the middle here, all right? Like such, with my handy dandy pitchfork. All right, this is Ethan's favorite composting tool, the pitchfork. All right, I've got my bucket of food scraps here. All right, it's about 3/4 full, and I'm just gonna dump all of that right in the middle, right like that. All right, then I'm gonna take my bucket and I'm gonna stuff it with leaves. How many buckets of leaves do I need? 3, because I have about a bucket full of here's 3. All right, easy as that. Right like that. I'm gonna spread it out a little bit. I'm actually gonna use some leaves to throw around the sides too. I like to kind of insulate it from smells and attracting critters. And critters being, again, the skunks, the raccoons, all of that stuff. So I'm just gonna use what's left in here to kind of insulate around the outside. Now, I tend to be a bit of a lazy composter sometimes, so I like to throw a few sticks and twigs in there. It creates air pockets for these guys to breathe. All right, so I'm just gonna shushle that around the outside a little bit. Give it a little insulation. All right, so now the last thing to do, probably got like a little food scrap stuck in your bucket here. Maybe you have running water out there. We do not here. So we got a bucket of water here. I'm just gonna give this bucket a nice little rinse-a-dinsel-do-ya. And I'm gonna pour that right over the top of my pile. right like that. And this pile's pretty dry. So I think what I'm gonna do is go ahead and add a bunch of more water, even though it did just rain. And it's gonna rain later on this week. But because this is nice and open, it will dry out pretty quickly, and it's really windy here, so it'll dry out. You wanna keep a check on that, all right? So, we're ready to let that cook, all right, until at least the next time. So we'll continue to build this pile up. The bigger the pile, the hotter it's gonna get in the middle. And as you will see from Amy McVeigh, she can get her piles up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so then this middle pile we turned over, and this is cooking away in here. So this is gonna cure or cook away for maybe probably another year. So if you're looking for compost in like a year, less than a year in your backyard, it may happen. It may happen. I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, but it's probably not that likely, especially in an open system. And these are pretty large bays. Typically you want 3 by 3 by 3, all right? And fill it all the way up and then let it cook down. That will get the heat going, and that'll give that perfect environment for the microbes to start partying and go ahead and kick up that heat a little bit. So this is cooking, and I wanted to show you guys the moisture level. So we talked earlier about the squeeze test. My motto is always dirty hands are happy hands, so dig on in there. So if you dig on into this compost pile, and yes, it did just rain. Woo, look at that, Mac Daddy. So there is one of those FBI agents, the fantastical earthworm, all right, night crawlers. These are not composting worms, all right, don't confuse them, but they do like the compost pile because they're eating a lot of that broken down soil in there. So Ethan, can you show us what a perfect moisture or good moisture content in our compost pile looks like?
Sure. We're going to hope that this compartment here has stuff that's a good example. So digging down beyond the leaf layer, there are more leaves on top to get a good mixture. We are going to give it the squeeze test. So if I can wring water out of it, it is too moist. If it retains its shape, it is just right. Let's give it a shot. Cannot wring any water out of it, but I certainly can make a nice compost ball.
Excellent. Thank you. So the soil saver, much like the homemade 3-bin system that we just learned about, pretty much, I mean, you're going to do the same thing. Only thing is this thing is nice and locked down, so you just want to twist the locks off. All right. Looks very similar on the inside. And it's a little dry, all right, because the soil saver does not come with these holes drilled, all right. I drilled those because we thought like it would help put rain in there. But you could always just like, if on a rainy day, just leave the lid cockeyed like that and let the natural rain come in. So you're gonna build the pile up just like you did with the 3-bin system. So I'm gonna get in here. I'm gonna just make a little hole, all right? Kind of just helps a little. Ooh, it's chilly in there. So this is my compost from home, and I'm just gonna, it's not very much. I'm just gonna put it in there. Now you'll notice too that I included some paper. I lined my compost bin at home with paper, so it's not as a hot mess to clean out at the end of the day. I also have some parchment paper in there, but I'm just gonna put that in there. I can cover this back up, all right? And because I added a little bit of leaves, a little bit of food scraps, I'm just gonna come over here and kind of guesstimate this is about 3 of those, or at least 2 of those, and just kind of spread that over. Now, you want it to be like squeeze. So if you check this out, like if you dig down a little further, and I get in here, and I squeeze my compost, falls right apart, all right? Squeeze, falls right apart. That's not what you mean. That is way too, not enough moisture, all right? What you would rather is, maybe if we dig down deeper, it's nicer down the bottom. We'll see. So what you want is, yeah, even that's too dry. The whole pile is too dry. So all we need to do is add a bunch more water. So thankfully, I brought a bunch with me. And so that's how I would be fixing this pile. Probably even a little bit more. I'd probably just be dumping some in there like that. Because if it gets too wet, you can always add more leaves just kind of to level it out. All right, so we're ready to go. Boom, done. Put the lid back on, snap it back down, nice and secure. There, you've just created your soil saver compost. All right, we are taking the maiden voyage of the Jora here at Green Mountain Compost. This is Recycle Rhonda, and I am gonna start adding in materials. So if you see, this is a dual chamber tumbler composter, kind of the Mac Daddy, because it's got all this foam and insulation and stuff, and it's quite expensive. But you can watch Ethan Hausman does a great description of this in the video series, Recycle Rhonda's YouTube channel, which I think you probably should be watching right now. Anyway, I just wanted to show the first time we're putting stuff in. So we've got food scraps, all right there, just from my kitchen. And we've got the browns. Again, keep in mind, just like any composter, you're going to add 3 times as much brown food as you are your food scraps. So, and then I just added 3 times as much paper towels into that. I'm sorry about that. For the brown food. And now I'm going to latch it down here. Right like that. And give it a tumble. Woo! All right. Thanks for coming along on our first voyage of using the Jora tumbler composter. Have a great day.